Good morning. My name is Chris Roebling, and I'm your moderator for this extraordinary program. And it's really the privilege of the Union League Club of Chicago to present. This is entitled Our Naval Needs in the 21st Century, and it's a report on the evolution of the new SSN 795 Hyman G. Rickover, which will be entering service shortly. We'll be hearing more about that in just a moment. The Union League Club, as you know, has been committed to community and country since its founding in 1879. So we are all about understanding the United States of America and what it takes to protect our nation and our allies and the sea lanes of communication that have, since our inception, and even before the founding of this source of prosperity, the benefits of which all of us have enjoyed. We're very proud also to welcome all of the organizations that are co-sponsoring this program, which I'd like to acknowledge right now. The Naval Submarine League, the Navy League of the United States, and its Illinois chapters at the Aurora Council, at the Chicago Council, at the Glenview Council, and the Lake County Council. The Standard Club of Chicago is a co-sponsor, warmly welcomed. The United States Naval Institute, the U.S. Submarine Veterans, Inc., we welcome all. The USS Illinois 786 Club and the USS Chicago 721 Club. All are co-hosting and co-sponsoring with the Union League Club. Let me tell you a little bit about our format. We're going to have a terrific report on the status of the new Hyman G. Rickover SSN 795, and then our main address will be from Vice Admiral J. Donnelly, retired, a former commander of Submarine Forces for the United States Navy, on our naval needs in the 21st century. The back end of this program is very much weighted in your favor as participants, because I'll want to receive written questions from you through the texting capability that we all are mastering with Zoom in this period of COVID. And also, we're very proud to present attorney Stephen Schlegel, who is really one of the columns of support at the Union League Club for its club activities, for its philanthropic activities, for the involvement of the club in the neighborhoods of Chicago through the Boys and Girls Clubs, which are currently serving some 13,000 Chicago children. Steve's one of the strongest supporters of those activities, and we're very glad that he's going to join us in the latter portion of this morning's program. So with that, I'd like to ask, and this is a little unusual because we're on Zoom, but we haven't had a program at the Union League Club since 1879 that did not start with our Pledge of Allegiance. And normally we all stand for that. It's a little strange in a Zoom environment, so I'm just going to sit, put my hand over my heart and say, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You can't provide liberty and justice for 330 million people without a Navy that is a blue water Navy. And we're really delighted this morning to have some retired Navy officers with us. And one of them, I want to say, Captain Wass. It's a privilege to have Captain Len Wass here. He is a native of Chicago. He grew up not far from where Hyman Rickover grew up. He graduated from the Naval Academy in 1964, and he served in the Vietnam War. He went on to lead the Submarine Reserve Unit here in Chicago, and he had a 35-year career as a management consultant. Retired Captain Lenois, it's a real privilege to welcome you, and we all look forward to your report on the status of the new Hyman G. Rickover.
Thank you, Chris. I have two slides. If we could put slide one up on the screen, Brian. I'd like to talk a little first about Virginia class and what that submarine is. When we had the Cold War underway, we developed a new submarine called the Seawolf class. And that was developed from a sheet of paper by a Springfield native who also still lives in Springfield, Admiral Ron Thunman of the class of '54. And from a clean sheet of paper with a group of his colleagues, they came out with what still is the finest submarine in the world, the Seawolf. Turned out it was very expensive, and Congress, when the Cold War ended with the Soviet Union, wanted to cut costs, and so the Virginia class came out from that, in saving about $1 billion a copy. The first Virginia class submarines, and they're superb submarines, the best in the world, except for the Seawolf. They're very good submarines, and the first ones were Block 1, 2, and 3. They had individual launchers for missiles. Of course, they had torpedo tubes that could launch a number of different items through those, but they had Tomahawk missiles, and they were single purpose. When Block 3 came along, of which the USS Illinois is one, they added another pod, so they have two pods, each able to fire 6 Tomahawk missiles. The Hyman Rickover is advanced now to Block 4, which has a lot of improvements in it that will enable it to deploy one further time over its lifetime. And Block 5 will soon be built. They're going to add a 70-meter section in the middle of the boat, and they're going to have 4 pods that each are going to be able to fire 6 different kinds of missiles. So they'll have a capability of 24. It's quite a flexible submarine. Goes all the way from intelligence gathering to battle ready in case that ever is needed. The Rickover started construction in 2015, as you see on the slide. It's almost complete, and the christening, and that's where the, by tradition, female sponsor will break a bottle of champagne over the sail of the submarine, and that will be coming up sometime early part of next year. And then 1 year from that point, the full commissioning of the Rickover. You'll see it's PCU Rickover up on the top, and that means it's a prospective unit. It's still not commissioned. Could we have the next slide? So here's the timeline of how this all works. The construction of the Virginia class is pretty unique. It's made in 4 modules, and each module is made at different locations. Huntington Ingalls in the Norfolk, Virginia area makes 1 module. Electric Boat makes basically the other 2 modules, one in Groton and the other in Rhode Island. These modules have everything inside, which makes it much more efficient to build a submarine rather than bringing everything through small holes in the hull and then trying to put that all together. So these 4 units are brought together, welded, and everything connected, and makes the construction time much shorter and therefore the costs lower. So you could see we're near the christening, and we're right near the float off, the graphic on the middle of the bottom. And the christening will probably take place in, as I said, early 2021. After delivery a year later at the commissioning, there's still about a year of acceptance and trials and sea trials. And once that's done, that boat is ready to be deployed to active duty squadrons, whether they be in Norfolk or Groton or Pearl Harbor or San Diego. So that's what we're looking forward in the future. We've budgeted for, I think, about 33 Virginia class. They are being built 2 per year. Unfortunately, we're retiring 3 to 4 per year of the old Los Angeles class. So in numbers, we're moving backwards, while some of our enemies are building 6 per year, including China and Russia. So with that, I'd like to turn the program back over to Chris. Chris Roebling, are you there?
Thank you very much, Captain Wass. Thank you for that update. It's a real privilege for the club to serve as. Yes, I hope can you hear me?
Yes.
That is not my.
We have you now, Chris.
Thank you. Once again. So thank you very much, Captain Wass. Appreciate that report. Our keynote presentation is from Vice Admiral J. Donnelly, one of the few naval officers to have led submarine forces for the United States. Also a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, went on to study acoustics at the graduate level, Monterey. And if you know the first thing about submarines, you know how important acoustics are to their survivability and to our achieving our mission. It's a real privilege to hand over the conversation to Vice Admiral J. Donnelly, retired.
Thank you, Chris. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay, I'm broadcasting to you from my home in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. That picture in the background is what I see literally as I look out my window here from my desk. And it's a beautiful day here. But good morning to all of the viewers in the Chicago area and points west. Good afternoon to those on the East Coast. It's really an honor and a privilege for me to talk to you today. The plan is for me to speak for 50 or maybe 20 minutes or so, and then as Chris mentioned, we will take questions and discussion via chat, and with Chris as a moderator. So I'm going to share my screen. There's an old saying that admirals can't speak unless there's a PowerPoint presentation involved, and so staying true to that claim, I'll share my screen and pull up some slides that'll help guide the discussion. Chris, do you see that slide now? Okay. All right. So I must
Yes,
admit,
I do. Yes, I do.
Got it. I must admit, you know, the topic today is understanding naval power in the 21st century. Because of my predisposition towards submarines, you would think that from the slides and the various photographs I selected that most of our Navy is submarines. That's not really the case, but I am admittedly somewhat biased. I'll go to the first slide. This is kind of the title slide for the presentation, and then I'm going to really explain why the United States needs a strong Navy in about 7 or 8 slides. And then we'll move on to some specific challenges that the Navy's facing today and open it up to questions. It's a pretty easy question. Why do we need a strong Navy? The answer is the United States is a maritime power. And our interests are served by having a strong Navy to protect our maritime interests and our financial interests. But there are actually 5 good reasons. And if you are an above average listener, at the end, we could do a quiz to see if you can remember the 5 real reasons why Donnelly thinks that we need a strong Navy. Before I get to those 5, and again, this is a great quote from President John F. Kennedy. The picture has nothing to do with the quote, but it's a good picture, so I just thought I'd include it. Kennedy, 6 months before his tragic death, had this quote. I won't read it to you, but he was speaking to the Cuban Missile Crisis and the importance of the United States Navy in helping to resolve that crisis short of a nuclear exchange with Russia. Control of the seas is what it was all about. It means our security, it means peace. Control of the seas means victory, and the United States must control the seas. Great quote from President Kennedy. So this is the answer, this is the stomp the floor. These are 5 reasons why we need a strong Navy. And I will get into a little more detail, but it has to do with the nation's wealth, our connections with our allies, the security of the United States and the global commons. It gets right to the values and our future. So let's begin. For our wealth, these stats are often quoted, and I think they're meaningful. 90% of all international trade moves on the ocean, 90% by weight. And 99% of all of our data that moves around the world and the internet travels in undersea cables. And we have a large constellation of communication satellites orbiting the Earth in various orbits. They carry up to 1% of that traffic. If we were to lose those key undersea cables, we'd be back in the pre-internet age, and that would be painful. Sea power is key critical to America's prosperity. Second point is, let me pull this up here. The second point is that the nation needs a Navy combined with our joint force to protect our security. The sea lanes of communication must remain open, and the armed forces of all of our allies kind of depend on freedom of the seas to move their people, their goods, their interests, and that depends on the sea lanes. So security is the second one. We talk about values. When I was on the 7th Fleet command ship, we did port visits frequently all over the Western Pacific. And it sent an extremely powerful signal to our allies as we would pull into port, and you would watch all the American sailors stream down the brow to go enjoy some liberty and explore a new land. And they would go blacks with whites, Asians, Hispanics, friends, buddies, arm in arm. Their color, their religion, their background had no bearing on their friendships. And that's not the case in most of those countries we visited. It sends a very powerful signal about our values. Sea power protects American values and also protects against intimidation from countries that would like to undermine international law. And finally, America's future is at sea. If you look at this, these statistics, it's pretty, it's very telling. In the United States, 10% of our counties border the ocean, but they contain 40% of our population. Around the world, 2/3 of the people on Earth live closer than 250 miles to the sea. So sea power can protect our access to very critical resources, but it also protects our homeland from those that would try to inflict pain on the majority of the people that live near the ocean. And finally, when we talk about integrated naval power, often you're talking about an integration with our maritime forces, which is the United States Marine Corps, United States Coast Guard, and the Navy. Integrated naval power can also refer to the integration of naval power, those three forces, with the rest of the joint force. And if we ever fight as a nation, we will fight as a joint force combined with our allies. And the Navy is just one member of that team, but they're an enabling member of that team. And that's the point I wanted to make there. Great stern shot of a Los Angeles class first flight. Okay, so I'm going to transition into some specifics of what's going on today. And I wanted to pull up this slide. This is the latest fleet locator that has been published. It shows where some of the main strike groups are located. The America out in the Western Pacific. Ronald Reagan is transiting the Straits of Malacca. Nimitz is in the 5th Fleet AOR, I think in a port visit right now in Bahrain. Iwo Jima and Makin Island are off the coast of the US. Those are LHDs, large deck amphibious ships. If you look at the numbers underneath, that just shows the deployed forces around the globe. A couple of takeaways. One, the majority of those are forward deployed. They're not in US home waters, they're forward deployed. About a third of our 297 ship Navy, that's the number of ships, battle force ships we have today, are deployed right now and or at sea. That's a pretty impressive number. So that's where the US Navy is today. These white streaks across this world chart are automated identification system tracks, AIS tracks. Any ship over 300 tons is required to have a transponder that identifies itself to other ships in the area. And this is just a time-lapse photo. And it really does show pretty effectively, I think, where the ocean-going traffic is around the world. I've drawn some yellow circles over the choke points. The various straits, Panama, Gibraltar, Suez Canal, and others. And you can really see where the shipping goes and what the density is from the United States to the rest of the world. You know, that first slide I showed about the importance of sea power to America's wealth. Well, look at all those white lines. Each one of those is carrying cargo back and forth between the US and its markets or from markets to the US consumers. Very important to our financial security. Now, not shown on that last chart was just because of the scale and the way it's cropped, it was not shown the Arctic. On the right side of this slide, it shows in magenta color what the ice coverage in the Arctic looked like in 1980 and what it looked like in 2015. 35 years later, you can see there's a lot of shrinkage of the ice cap. And that has enabled what you see on the left side of this chart, kind of this dashed line here where my cursor is tracing. That is the northern sea route. And that is starting to get more and more traffic. There are cruise ships and merchant ships transiting kind of along that dotted line. The takeaway from this one is all the circles. Russia has the most waterfront in the Arctic, but look at all these bases. There are 12 of them shown there in various states. The two blue ones are regional headquarters. I'm not sure with the way this is being transmitted, if you can read the legend there. The red ones are confirmed bases operating now either in an upgrade or in a construction status. And then the yellow ones are bases that may be upgraded. There's been some discussion about upgrading those. So 12 bases along the Arctic. The United States doesn't have any bases along the Arctic. And as more and more people start sailing the Arctic, it's going to become necessary, at least I predict, for more operations up there than we currently have. Now, you know, back to my submarine roots, the submarine forces never left the Arctic. And we routinely transit from Atlantic to Pacific or vice versa. There was quite a stir in the media earlier this month when USS Seawolf showed up for a port visit in Norway. Why is that unusual? Well, Seawolf is home ported in Bangor, Washington. How did it get there? Well, you guess how it got there. But we routinely transit the Arctic, and every 2 years we do an ice exercise in the Arctic where we go up and we do science experiments, and we also do tactical development exercises, and we shoot exercise torpedoes, and we learn, our crews learn how to operate proficiently in that part of the world. But it is nevertheless a growing area of interest. It's not really Navy, this is more of a Coast Guard thing, but I'll just point out that the United States Coast Guard operates 2 icebreakers. They're 50 years old. Russia operates over 40. The largest icebreaker in the world is Russian. It has 2 nuclear reactors for its propulsion. So some would argue that we're a little bit behind in our ability to project power and to protect our interests in the Arctic. You be the judge. Okay, back to another world chart blow up of AIS. These green tracks are, again, automated identification system tracks. Where the traffic is really heavy, it turns to yellow. Where it's extremely heavy, the tracks turn to red. You can see some potential friction points, and you hear about this in the media all the time. Eastern Mediterranean, Russia is operating there in a big way, Syria, the Middle East. This is down here, the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb in the bottom of the Red Sea and the kind of the opening to the Gulf of Aden. The Middle East, Straits of Hormuz, a lot of traffic, 40% of the oil traffic, oil cargo moves through there en route to the Western Pacific, our allies. Pakistan and India are highlighted there, 2 nuclear powers that have longstanding border claims over their territories. Then down on the bottom, cut off a little bit, Straits of Malacca, one of the busiest straits in the world. South China Sea, I'm going to show a slide here in a moment on that. That is a real potential area of conflict. And of course, North Korea. And there's the great leader, Kim Jong-un, on the bridge of a submarine. But you never know what to expect from North Korea. So there's lots of friction points, and oh, by the way, they're all at strategic lines of communication and choke points. So another reason why America's Navy, forward deployed, keeps a lid on these things and serves as a deterrent for some of these friction points to maybe get out of control. I want to go back to the South China Sea. That's an area that is a real concern strategically. You saw from the AIS tracks how much traffic goes through there, seaborne traffic, and it's essential to the free nations of the world that we keep those waters open and free for peaceful transit of cargo. There's a lot of conflicting territorial claims in here. I've tried to illustrate them. What you see here is 6 nations bordering, and I've kind of highlighted their various claims of territorial water. They're all overlapping. You can see the Philippines is this blue line. Let's see, the Philippines is the magenta line here. And China, this red line. So when you get down into the Spratlys in the southern part of the South China Sea, it's got joint claims by Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Philippines, and China. And there have been some low-level conflicts in those areas where fishermen and other merchants have been stopped, and there have been actually some collisions while people try to shoulder ships out of their what they consider their waters. It's a potential ignition point. Kind of going through that a little bit more, I've drawn in here what's referred to as the 9-dash line. This is the line that China claims everything inside this line is their territorial waters. That's completely in conflict with international law, and nobody recognizes the 9-dash line except, of course, China. But inside that, there's a whole bunch of islands. And those islands and reefs, basically, China has embarked on an effort to turn those reefs into man-made islands, and then has claimed exclusive economic zones out to 200 miles from each. They're all kind of shown in here. There's 6 of them shown by these black squares. And those, before China started pumping sand, were underwater at high tide. The International Court in The Hague for the UN Conventional Law of the Seas heard a suit by the Philippine government and ruled in favor of the Philippines that those features are not considered islands because they were uninhabitable by humans. And the fact that a dredging operation pumped sand and made them into man-made features does not change that status in the eyes of the court. And so therefore they are not entitled to any kind of exclusive economic zone or territorial waters surrounding those features. I'll just show as one example. There are 6 of them, but in 2006, this is a satellite photo of the reef. Again, underwater at high tide. Then up in the upper right, this is a picture of, taken from an aircraft of all the dredges that were in this part of the photo, dredging it out, pumping sand, huge ecological disaster. This entire reef was destroyed. And then in 2015, this was the satellite image. Harbor, there's fuel tanks, there's a long 10,000-foot runway here. China in demarches was warned about militarizing this, and they said this is not a military base. We are not going to militarize that. They've then built revetments. They filled them with fighter aircraft. When we demarched them again, they said, oh, no, they're, and missile launchers, by the way. There's missile launchers on these islands. Those are all defensive weapons, they said. These are not offensive weapons. These are merely defensive weapons. And then anybody that's been shot at in the military will tell you that, you can be shot at by an offensive weapon or a defensive weapon. It kind of feels a lot the same. And then this is a kind of my get off the stage slide. I wanted to just show you, this is called Battle Force 2045. This is the latest force structure assessment done by the Department of Defense on the necessary size of the Navy. This chart, if you can read it, has the current fleet numbers. As I mentioned earlier, we're at 297 battle force ships today. In 2016, CNO John Richardson did a Navy force structure assessment and came up with a number of 355 ship goal. Of that, 66 ships were to be fast attack submarines. Today, we're at 50 fast attack submarines. So there was this, of all of the ship classes, the biggest gap was in the fast attack submarine area. And we were looking hard at ways to close that gap more quickly, to mitigate that gap in any way that we could. As Len Wass mentioned at the beginning of this program, we're retiring Los Angeles class submarines at 2, 3, and even 4 a year. We're building Virginia class submarines at 2 a year. And so the numbers are going down. We're at 50 today. In this latest assessment, Secretary of Defense Esper announced on the 6th of October, so this is brand new, the actual assessment will not be released until spring of next year. But he kind of highlighted at the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessment in a speech that he gave on the 6th of October, what that force structure assessment, or what they're calling Battle Force 2045, would look like. The number of needed fast attack submarines has gone up to the range of 70 to 80. You can kind of look through This number here, 140 to 240, is unmanned surface and unmanned underwater ships, or in some cases they call these optionally manned, where you might have a very, very small crew on it that you could take off if necessary. You can see the other changes there, but if you add in the unmanned, which don't count today, but if you added them in, it points to a Navy of well over 500 vessels. So that's where we are today. Secretary Esper did dwell a little bit on this submarine number, and he said, maybe we should build 3 a year instead of 2 a year. Maybe we should, and he's actually directed that we should take the up to 7 of the newest Los Angeles class submarines that were built with life of ship cores and refuel them at the end of their core life to extend the life of that hull a bit longer, to help bridge that gap from where we are today until we get up to a force level of 70 to 80. So anyway, this is the latest Battle Force 2045. In 3 weeks, we're going to have an election. Who knows what this might look like in the spring when the report is finally released, or how long this feeling will go. But currently, the submarine force enjoys a great deal of support. So I will finish with a fundraising plea, and I will kind of, after my Q&A session, I'll tee up Steve Schlegel, who's going to give you some more details. But at the top of this slide is the web address for the Rickover Commissioning Committee website. And you can donate at that website very easily. This photograph, or this picture here, was taken off that website. It's actually a very, very good website. We've got a very talented webmaster. And I would encourage you to go visit that. And if you're inclined, make a donation, a small donation. The commissioning committee faces a unique challenge because the ship is not named after a state. All the other Virginia class, except for the USS John Warner, are named after states. And the state stands up a commissioning committee and actually makes some contributions to the fundraising for that. These funds go for a very, very good cause. And we have a challenge on the Rickover Commissioning Committee in that we don't have that state funding available. And we're going to depend on folks like you all who are watching today to help us out a little bit. Okay, with that, this picture was recently taken in the Philippine Sea. It's the USS Nimitz and the USS Roosevelt, 2 carrier operations in the Western Pacific, deterring aggression and supporting human freedom. Okay, over to you, Chris. Do we have any questions?
Vice Admiral J. Donnelly, please accept my applause. And were we at the club right now, you'd be hearing a thunderous amount of applause for your presentation about sea power in the 21st century. Yes, we've got terrific questions. Let's get right to it. I do want to recognize Christopher Swanson. He says he has brought as a virtual guest today, his colleague, Peter Besser, a proud graduate of the United States Naval Academy and a former surface warfare officer. But as a submariner, we know, Admiral, you're not going to hold that against him. We're going to say hello to Bill Whitsitt, chairman of the USS Montana Committee. He is joining us today and sends his warm regards and appreciates your time, Admiral, and your involvement. David Cohn, former director of public affairs for 15 years at the club, asks either Captain Wass or Admiral Donnelly, how significant is it? And you just kind of alluded to this, but let's take another moment, that SSN 795 is going to be named for and honor a historic individual, Admiral Rickover, instead of a city like the USS Chicago or a state like our very own USS Illinois. Isn't it relatively rare for a warship to be named after an individual who was not a president?
Lynn, I'd be happy to take a stab at that unless you want to go. Well, let me.
Admiral, I think we should go with you. I think we're having a little difficulty with Len.
Okay. Well, Admiral Rickover is often referred to as the father of the nuclear navy. He was tremendously influential in establishing naval reactors and bringing nuclear propulsion into the Navy. And for many, many decades served in that capacity. We would not have nuclear submarines the way we have them today had it not been for his leadership. So I think it is very important that we always have a Rickover in our fleet, and it should be a nuclear-powered warship. We have one other fast-tech submarine today, the USS John Warner, which is named after a very influential politician and former Secretary of the Navy that honored him with that, and he is still living. And it's even more rare for a ship to be named after a living leader. And then only yesterday, the Secretary of the Navy announced the next name of a submarine, the SSN 804, will be named the USS Barb, which is a World War II diesel submarine that had a very enviable record during the war, led by their famous Medal of Honor winning commanding officer, Eugene Fluckey, author of several books, but the one that I like the best is Thunder Below. And I used to give every prospective commanding officer during my tenure as ComSub 4 a copy of Thunder Below, told them there's lots of great leadership lessons inside this book. Read them before you get to command.
If I could just say a few words, I'd hardly endorse everything Admiral Donnelly just said. One of the most influential mentors and people in my life was Admiral Rickover. My father, Admiral Rickover, and two of my COs. And I think we as Americans owe much of our freedoms to Admiral Rickover through to his foresight and, quite frankly, bullheadedness and ability to deal with Congress and the Navy all at once. We got nuclear submarines way ahead of our enemies, and that really gave us a leg up. And as far as the USS Barb, I had the distinct honor of meeting Admiral Fluckey a couple of times, but in my civilian job, I was talking to a senior vice president of construction of a nuclear plant, and I asked him what he did. He said in the Navy, he was a submariner, and he served on the USS Barb during World War II. And as we talked, he told me the story of how he was the electrician on the watch, controlling the speeds of the submarine forward and aft and so forth. And he could hear the chains of the Moor mine rubbing against the hull as they went into a harbor to sink a few Japanese ships. Those folks from World War II, including the Barb and several, all of those submarines out of Pearl Harbor, were truly my heroes and still are.
Thank you, Captain. Artie Yant, a longtime member of the Union League Club, asks, are alliances permanent? Who are our allies today?
Well, I think that's a good question. I don't think alliances are permanent. And you can kind of see in the last several years, we've kind of backed away from some of our alliances, at least some of our international alliances. From a Navy perspective, our closest allies, and of course we have more than 100 allies, but our closest Navy allies is UK, Japan, very, very close relationship, Australia. These are all high-end partners that have fought with us and alongside us for a long, long time, and they're very, very capable. The Republic of Korea, South Korea, in the Pacific area, certainly the South American nations, and Singapore is a great host to one of our bases down there and is a very important ally in the region. But you can see, relations with some of our allies kind of, they go hot and they go cold. And we were asked to leave the Philippines when we left Clark Air Force Base. Then the Philippines warmed up a little bit to us, and then they had a change of leadership and they kind of cooled off a little bit to us. Same thing happens in our nation after elections every 4 years. It depends on I think, somewhat on the personalities of the leaders and what's happening in the region.
Thank you very much. Admiral Don Price wants to know about the Navy's efforts at integration. You referred to this with your reference to the port calls in the Western Pacific, but is the Navy a meritocracy today? Are folks advancing in the Navy? Are we seeing, say, flag officers that reflect the face of America we all know so well?
Good question. I've always felt that the Navy leads the nation in their efforts toward a integrated meritocracy. It's not perfect. We're not there yet. The submarine force is a good example. We don't have as many minority officers in the submarine force as we would like to have. We would like to be more representative of the nation that we serve. And it's been difficult. In the officer corps, typically our new officers that are coming in are from technical majors standing near the very top of their class. That's not always the case, but that's typically the case. Industry as well as the Navy very much wants to improve their diversity. And when there are minority members that are in technical majors at the very top of their classes from respected universities, there's tremendous competition to recruit them. And there's just not enough to go around. And so we don't bring in as many as we would like to bring in. Those that come in and stay in do extremely well. And we've got a four-star African American now leading the Air Force. We've had a four-star submariner who is the commander of U.S. Strategic Command, African American, Cecil Haney, and several others. And we celebrate their successes, but we're not where we need to be yet. But I think we're leading the nation in that area. That'll be my answer.
Harrison Heller picks up, Admiral, on your Arctic strategic point by asking of our presence in coastal Alaska and on the Aleutian Islands. And as a former resident of Nome, Alaska, I can tell you that there is less military in Alaska today than there was when I lived there. But also asking about Canada's military presence in the Arctic. So between the two of us, what are we looking at up there?
Well, we have very little military presence in the Arctic other than the submarine forces I mentioned. We just don't have the ships that can go up there and operate in that marginal ice zone. Much less icebreakers. I mentioned we had two that were very old, and they're primarily used to service the ice station down in the Antarctic. And to open the seaways to the ports that allow for replenishment of supplies down there. But not a lot of military operations from the sea other than submarine operations. Now, Canada, it's a different story. Canada has the world's second largest icebreaker fleet. And so, that's their backyard, and they're up there in a much greater way. The two nations do aircraft patrols of the Arctic from a military perspective. But, my worry is someday we're going to see a cruise liner that gets in trouble up there and needs, search and rescue assistance. We're going to see some sort of ecological disaster from, I don't know, maybe a tanker that hits the ice or something. And the response is going to be very, very difficult because of the distances involved and because of the lack of forces that are already gathered in the area, my opinion.
Now, as a former boat commander and as a leader of commanders, Christopher Swanson asks you key takeaways from the Brett Crozier situation. Just to refresh recollection, Captain Crozier was the commander of the USS Roosevelt, and he was asking for help with COVID, but his letter leaked. He was relieved. They talked about the Navy, I think, actually discussed reinstating. I guess he's now at a desk in San Diego, and he claims that he did not leak his own letter. How did that approach tailhook dimensions for the Navy, or not? What was that a storm in the Navy or no?
Well, it was a very unfortunate series of circumstances, and in addition to the commanding officer Brent Crozier, who's a very fine officer, I don't know him personally. We also lost several others in that chain of command, up to the acting Secretary of the Navy, Mosley, who flew out on a Navy executive jet to Guam to address the crew for 45 minutes, and in the process, said some things that he wasn't able to walk back, and he ended up resigning from his office. That whole incident was unfortunate. I think I understand the incentive for sending. It was an email with an attachment, and he sent the email out to a broad array of aviators only, both in his chain of command and outside of his chain of command, but they were all aviators. That was mistake number one. He left out the 7th Fleet commander, his operationals boss's boss. Big mistake. Happened to be 7th Fleet commander was a submarine officer. So this was an audience of aviators, and was a very well worded email that I read. And it really tugged at the heartstrings, because it appeared to me that he was interested in the health and welfare of his crew. What should have happened, and these things are always in hindsight, but that would have been a much better communication if that letter had been sent as a personal 4 message, record message traffic, personal 4, with the address of his operational commanders, from the strike group commander to the numbered fleet commander to the U.S. Pacific Fleet commander, all the way up to the chief of naval operations. But if he had done it that way, then it would have stayed within channels. It wouldn't have broken in the media before his operational commanders even saw it. And I think it would have all been a very much different outcome if that had been the case.
Lessons learned. I'm sure they'll be teaching a class at the Naval Institute. All right. James Kirk says about your photograph of the Chinese real estate in the middle of the South China Sea. He believes that he saw an underground submarine base in the lower left of that particular island. Does that strike him? He might be referring to confidential or classified information there. Oh, we lost the audio.
I'm sorry.
There we
go. I think what he may be referring to is Hainan Island. I am not aware of on the man-made islands of any underground submarine bases. I'd be skeptical of that. But on Hainan Island, which is at the very southern part of China, there is a large naval base there, and it's been in the media. We've got unclassified satellite photos, as there are underground pens there where their submarines go, and that may be what he was referring to.
Understood. Thank you.
Rest assured that the Navy knows exactly where they are.
We are happy to hear that. Thomas Gillen, not submarine related, but your thoughts, Admiral, on the after effects of the terrible tragedy of the USS Bonhomme Richard, which my family was actually in San Diego when that was burning. Terrible, terrible tragedy. Is that hull gone? That's never coming back, or what's the status there?
I don't think the final decision has been made yet. That was a real tragedy, but at least there was no loss of life involved. It could have been much worse.
I can say a surface ship captain friend of mine used to tell me the world's most dangerous place is anywhere on a ship of the United States Navy. They're very dangerous places.
I'd agree with that. I would go one further to say, as dangerous as that is, it's even more dangerous to be underwater on a ship in the United States Navy.
Amen. All
And
right.
then even more so underwater under the ice cap in a ship of the United States Navy.
Yeah.
But we do that routinely
John?
and safely. But I think the decision on the Bonhomme Richard will possibly be a partly political decision. I've seen cost estimates, preliminary cost estimates to repair that ship might be about the same cost as building a new one.
Right.
So you have to ask yourself, which way should we go? It may be that politically they'll say we are not going to give up this ship to a fire, and we're going to dam the cost. We're going to go ahead and rebuild it.
But,
I don't know.
And on whose fitness report is that incident going?
Well, the commanding officer of the ship, the one-star admiral that is over him, and probably the three-star admiral over him, and who knows where it'll end. But and possibly the contractor that was doing the work in that space that caught fire.
Right.
But, the accountability hasn't been assigned yet because I think the investigation is ongoing. But accountability will be assigned, I assure you.
That will be a tough day. John Radens is correcting me. It's submariner, not submariner.
That's true. We consider ourselves superior mariners, and so we call ourselves submariners. The Brits go by submariner.
Thank you for
but the U.S. guys go by submariner.
Well, we're gonna work to get that straight at the Union League Club. Let's see here. Thank you for the Zoom meeting. This is from Sean Verma, and he says, thank you for the update. What's the best way to attend or get on the list for the christening commission? Happy birthday, Navy. Yes, the Navy just had its 245th birthday. Clap, clap, clap. Way to go, Navy. Looking young at 245. And Hooyah, Rickover, thank you. Sean Verma, former 709 sailor.
Sean Verma?
Sean Verma, V-E-R-M-A.
I'm trying to remember. I'm getting a little old now, but I had command of Hyman G. Rickover, great honor, my commander command from 1991 to 1995. And
Wow.
I took command of that ship on my 38th birthday. What a birthday gift that was.
Oh my gosh. All right. Here, David Hilver says, thank you, Admiral Donnelly. Who assigns the mission destinations of submarines? And this gets me to a question I want to ask, but please, who tells you guys where to go?
In the case of the fast attack submarines, it's the combatant commander. He is the operational commander for the not only naval forces, but all the joint forces in his theater of operation. For the case of the strategic ballistic missile submarines, it's a different story. They work for the U.S. Strategic Command commander. And those are given very broad areas of the ocean, and they're just told to go out and patrol in that area, and no one knows where they are except the people on board.
Fascinating. James, okay, well, my question is, are you going to tell us how fast, how many knots the new Rickover will make?
No.
More than 21.
Oh, darn it. Actually, thank you for not telling us. James Belleck asks, Vice Admiral Donnelly, sir, do you have more book recommendations for junior officers? We notice you had Thunder Below, and who was the author of Thunder Below?
Eugene Flucky.
Flucky. So any other book recommendations for junior officers about to enter the submariner force?
I'll tell you, I like, there's a lot. Ned Beach, Edward L. Beach, Run Silent, Run Deep is another good one.
Of course.
I just finished a fascinating
Nautilus 90 North.
I just finished a fascinating book that I'd recommend to any junior officer. It's called Why We Sleep. And if I had only known the importance of getting a good night's sleep when I was a younger man, I'd probably be healthier today than I am.
You know, it's 12:50 and we've got to stick with our minute by minute, but we've got great questions here. We're going to send them to the Admiral, and if he gets a spare minute, he might get back to us, and I'm sure we'll find a place to post them. One, you mentioned China. Should we be worried about their aircraft carriers that have that lip going up? Have they found out something about aircraft carriers that our designers don't know?
You know, China has two operational aircraft carriers that are based on with ski jump bows that are based on a Russian design, but I think they've got 4 under construction now. And yes, I think you know there's a reason why they want aircraft carriers, because that's how you project power. That's what makes the United States Navy so awesome, is because of the payload capability that our aircraft carriers bring to the fight. And you know, flattery is the greatest, or they say sometimes imitation is the greatest form of flattery. I think we need to pay attention to their carrier development program. One-on-one, not a problem today, but you know, if they bring a bunch of carriers into a region, that's some real potential combat capability that we need to be mindful of. Great targets for submarines,
Right.
by the way.
Vice Admiral Donnelly, thank you for your address. Thank you for your replies. And now is the time. You had that terrific image of the torpedo leaving its home, going to its destination. And this is the point at which we want to hand over the program to our friend Steve Schlegel, who might actually get an assist from Captain Waz on our description of fundraising. So thank you to Admiral Donnelly, and don't go away, but Steve Schlegel, the floor now is yours.
Thank you, Chris, and good to see everybody. As a preliminary matter, Chris brought up the relationship of the Union League Club to this committee and to its support for military affairs and for Navy affairs through its various committees. He also brought up the Boys and Girls Clubs that I'm so intimately involved with. I thought I'd start out with a little bit of a fun fact. The Union League Club itself started out with a commitment to the military forces of the Union way back in 1863. The Union League Boys and Girls Clubs, or the Navy, was started before that, 245 years ago. And the Union League Boys and Girls Clubs were started more than 100 years ago in 2019 by a group of Union League Club members that wanted to get the truants off the street in Pilsen and get the paper boys into a good club atmosphere so that they could create some good citizens for the rest of the country and the community. In recent years, the U.S. Navy has had a partnership through the guys at Great Lakes with the Union League Boys and Girls Clubs in a program that in a very direct way supports the submarining efforts of the U.S. Navy. My fun fact for the day for everybody is that the Sea Perch program is a program whereby our youth going down into about the 5th grade level compete with one another and build their own robotic submarines, which they then take up to a competition that is run in conjunction with the U.S. Navy. It's part of our STEM program. And being an institution that has graduated 98% of its members from high school over the course of the last 40 years, from some of the poorest neighborhoods in the city of Chicago, I can report to you that a number of our graduates have been recruited by both the Army and the Navy and are now attending colleges and have attended colleges under our OTC program. So there's a real partnership program between the military and the community here in Chicago, and especially the Navy and our Sea Perch program. The commissioning committee has the privilege of providing civilian support to the Rickover crew as the Rickover begins service next year in defense of our nation. Participating in the commissioning of the Rickover gives us all a chance as civilians to support our national defense and the individuals who provide that defense. I'm going to therefore ask that you step up to join our committee in supporting the Rickover by making a tax-deductible donation to the work of the committee. Towards that end, Captain Wass has told you that the ship is likely to hit the water and get christened early next year, but that's going to be perhaps a year before the commissioning committee and ceremony is held out on the East Coast. The commissioning ceremony is a long-standing and revered tradition that promotes patriotism among those who attend, but more importantly, it shows the crew of the newly commissioned vessel that the public appreciates the great sacrifices they are making to defend our nation. I suppose you all know that this commissioning ceremony is costly, but you may not know that the Congress provides very, very limited funds for basics such as bunting, attendee stands, and a little bit of bus transportation from a local hotel to the ceremony. To give the crew and the public a proper ceremony, our committee must raise funds and organize the ceremony and the accompanying celebrations. Funds donated are going to be used to buy items for the crew that are not supplied by the Navy, exercise equipment to be used while at sea, among other things. The crew spends many months at sea in very close quarters, and the ship's a very special place and environment. However, it's up to civilian committees such as ourselves to provide this needed equipment, among other things. The ceremony and accompanying activities will also honor Admiral Rickover, an American success story who continues to inspire new generations. As a young boy, Rickover escaped present-day Poland when it was part of the Russian Empire, and his family immigrated to the United States and settled in Chicago to escape the pogroms. He graduated from, actually he grew up on the west side in Lawndale, where some of our Boys and Girls Clubs are located. Towards this end, he went on to do so well as to graduate from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1922. He was the driving force behind the development of the first nuclear submarine in 1955 and became the father of the nuclear Navy. He revolutionized Navy ship propulsion, quality control, personnel selection, and training and education to build the nation's nuclear fleet. I'm here to ask you to please join our committee. Make a donation to help out the work of the committee, and consider coming to the commissioning ceremony as it takes shape, and stay in touch with us through our website and through our meetings that we have regularly. There are a number of easy ways to donate. Go to the website, which has been posted on the chat. It's ussrickover.org. Simply fill out the donation form, pay for it by a credit card, or if you want to write a check, they'll show you how to do it and where to send it there. If anybody wants to know right now, send it to the Rickover Committee at the Union League Club, 65 West Jackson Boulevard, Chicago, Illinois, 60604. It's an honor to be with you all, and I hope to see you around the committee and at the commissioning ceremony. Thanks much.
Thank you, Steve. Now, Captain Wass, were you going to add a grace note to the statement of Attorney Steve Schlegel?
Got to unmute.
Am I muted now? Okay. Yes, I'd like to just add my support to what Steve is saying. 8 years ago in 2012, I assumed the responsibility for chairing the commissioning committee for the USS Illinois, and I learned that while Congress allocated our tax money to the tune of almost $3 billion for each Virginia-class submarine, it allocated only enough money for bunting, buses, and the stadium stands for the commissioning. Everything else has to be raised through donated funds. And these amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're really going to do it right. For example, it's traditional the commissioning committee feeds 4,000 people who show up for these commissioning ceremonies. It's traditional to, at the christening and also commissioning, to hold dignitary dinners for the crew to celebrate and thank them. So I'd urge everybody to take stock of what Steve is suggesting and make as generous a contribution as you can. And the money will be used very, very wisely, I can assure you.
Thank you, Captain Len Wass. Thank you, Vice Admiral J. Donnelly. Thank you, Steve Schlegel. On behalf of literally the scores of attendees that we've had today, I'm going to be clapping for all of them in thanking each of you, as well thanking our co-sponsors. And let me just recite again: the USS Chicago 721 Club, the USS Illinois 786 Club, the Union League Club of Chicago, obviously, the U.S. Submarine Veterans, Inc., U.S. Naval Institute, the Standard Club of Chicago, the Navy League of the United States with its Illinois chapters, Aurora Council, Chicago Council, Glenview Council, Lake County Council, thank you one and all, and the Naval Submarine League. We're all enjoying the blessings of liberty every day, and we want our children and grandchildren to do so as well. And for all of that to happen, we need a strong United States Navy. I appreciate very much everybody taking part today, and on behalf of the Union League Club and the Public Affairs Committee of the Union League Club and the Hyman Rickover Commissioning Committee at the Union League Club, I say thank you and have a pleasant afternoon.